introduction, and I'm very grateful to the University of Ulster for hosting this event this evening. And there's no doubt that we meet here at the University of Ulster at a difficult time for Northern Ireland, but despite that I want to start on an optimistic and a positive note, because despite the current situation I continue to believe that 2013 has the potential to be a great year for Northern Ireland. Derry London Derry has taken its place as the UK's first ever City of Culture, and in just a few months' time it will be the first city here to host the All-Ireland Flower. Belfast will later this year play host to one of the largest multi-sport events in the world, when the World Police and Fire Games come to town. And of course in June some of the most powerful figures in the world will come to County Fermanagh for the G8 summit. All of these events provide us here with the opportunity to present to the world a modern, forward-looking Northern Ireland that's both a thriving cultural hub and very much open for business. That's the Northern Ireland which I believe the overwhelming majority of people here want, a place which has left its bitter past behind and whose best days lie ahead. This is also essential if Northern Ireland is to compete effectively in the global race for jobs and investment. And I pay tribute to the work done by the Northern Ireland Executive on promoting Northern Ireland as a great place in which to invest and do business. Both the First and the Deputy First Minister and the Enterprise Minister Arlene Foster have shown huge commitment on this, with striking successes in high-value sectors such as aerospace and financial services technology. And I also pay tribute to our hosts this evening, the University of Ulster, for the role that they and Queen's play in enhancing the attractiveness of Northern Ireland for inward investment, as well as delivering truly world-class teaching across the full range of disciplines. Both universities are involved in cutting-edge research and spin-off businesses, creating jobs for local people and developing products that change lives. And in light of these kinds of success stories, it has been deeply depressing to see negative images of Northern Ireland beamed around the world over the weeks since the vote on flags in Belfast City Council on the 3rd of December. The global economic downturn has hit us hard in Northern Ireland, not least because of the depth of the economic connections with the Republic of Ireland, where the property crash was even more devastating than it was in the UK. And even with signs of recovery now emerging, many businesses are still struggling to keep their heads above water. For retailers in particular, the crucial weeks in the run-up to Christmas and the January sales can make the difference between survival or insolvency. In these circumstances, it's difficult to imagine anything more damaging than continued street protests about flags. I condemn this disorder at the dispatch box in Parliament in the strongest terms from the day after that fateful vote took place. I say again that the violence we've seen on our streets is appalling and it is intolerable. I fully and wholeheartedly support the efforts being made by the PSNI to keep order in the face of this lawless rioting, and I pay tribute to the courage being shown by PSNI officers night after night on the streets of Belfast, putting their personal safety on the line to keep the people of Northern Ireland safe and secure. And those who've been trying to bring Northern Ireland to a standstill need to take a long, hard look at what it is they think they're achieving. I can understand that feelings run high when it comes to issues on flags, particularly in Northern Ireland where questions of identity remain so sensitive. But nothing can excuse the scenes we've witnessed, with over 60 police officers injured. The idea that hurling bricks and petrol bombs at the police is a way to express patriotism and support for the Union flag is frankly incomprehensible. These violent protesters are damaging the cause they claim to support, and I am convinced that they're doing significant damage to the Northern Ireland economy. They are threatening people's jobs and livelihoods with what they are doing. Not only are they undermining the cause they profess to uphold, they are being reckless with the peace process and all that it's achieved over the last 20 years. They're putting the police in harm's way. They're doing that not just with bricks and petrol bombs, but they're also opening up opportunities for attacks by dissident Republicans on those officers dissident Republicans who relentlessly continue their efforts to murder police officers. It's vital that this issue comes off the streets to allow local politicians and community leaders the space to sit round a table and engage in a dialogue. Now, the recent history of Northern Ireland demonstrates clearly that it's when the rioting and the violence stop and the talking begins that workable and practical solutions can be found to deal with long-entrenched problems. So it's essential that all of Northern Ireland's political parties work together to find a way forward which sees decisions on flags made in a way which respects different views and takes into account the different traditions and identities present in today's Northern Ireland. That's something I've pushed for repeatedly in the many meetings I've had with Northern Ireland's political leaders over recent weeks. And of course, it is absolutely crucial that real progress is now made to address the underlying divisions in the community which can poison the debate on issues like flags and make them so fraught with tension. Time and again, Northern Ireland's political leaders have rightly expressed their commitment to building a shared and cohesive society. This is a theme to which I and my predecessor Owen Paterson and the Prime Minister have returned to many times. If this disorder demonstrates anything, it demonstrates that we just can't go on as we are in Northern Ireland. So much has been achieved in the last 2 decades since the peace process really got underway. The overwhelming majority of people in Northern Ireland can lead their lives with a normality and a freedom from fear which would have been impossible back in the dark days of the Troubles. But we all need to acknowledge that the process isn't finished and that the stability delivered by the Belfast Agreement should never be taken for granted. Sectarian divisions remain deeply entrenched, and it's time for bold moves by Northern Ireland's political leadership to address them. That's essential both for our security here and for our economy. The costs of division remain far too high. Now, there are already a number of initiatives underway to start the process of bringing different parts of the community together and building mutual understanding. For example, the Executive's Programme for Government sets out the goal of ensuring that all children have the chance to participate in shared education by 2015. Important work has also been done, for example, on the plan for a Lizanelli shared education campus. And there's now an urgent need to press ahead with a range of projects which will deliver real and lasting change. The devolution settlement means that the policy levers for delivering such change rightly now lie in the hands of devolved ministers. But the UK government will continue to push for progress, not least because of the Prime Minister's personal commitment and interest in Northern Ireland and his personal interest and commitment to bridging the sectarian divides. And I welcome the strong support for this goal expressed by the Taoiseach and the Irish government, and I'm happy to work with them on helping to move things forward here. We all know that delivering a shared future won't be easy, but over recent years the political leadership of Northern Ireland have shown themselves capable of taking difficult decisions to make progress. They've fixed more difficult problems than the ones we face today, and I believe that they can rise to this challenge as they have to so many others over the last 20 years. And let's face it, even before the setbacks of the last 3 weeks, Northern Ireland businesses were having a hard time. These protests are an added burden they could well do without, during a period when we're still living through some of the most difficult economic conditions since the 1930s. Of course, a large number of economic policy areas are now devolved, but the UK government's national economic responsibilities mean that many of our decisions have a significant impact in Northern Ireland. So that gives us an important role in efforts to secure the prosperity needed to help underpin political stability here. We're determined to put the whole of the UK, including Northern Ireland, back on the right path to growth and recovery. And when the coalition was formed, we inherited the largest deficit in our country's peacetime history, one of the worst of any major developed economy. That's left us having to borrow around £200,000 a minute and pay £120 million a day in debt interest. So we've had to take action to ensure the country lives within its means after the decade of irresponsible borrowing and reckless spending that occurred under our predecessors. And in 2.5 years since the election, the deficit's down by a quarter, helping keep interest rates at near record lows. We've achieved this and yet still been able to support Northern Ireland with the highest grant per head received by any constituent part of the United Kingdom. And reductions in spending in Whitehall departments and a shift to capital investment in the autumn statement will see the Northern Ireland Executive benefit from a further 132 million of capital funding. By the end of this Parliament, corporation tax will be down to 21%, the lowest of any major Western economy, and we're continuing to consider seriously the case for devolving corporation tax in Northern Ireland. We've introduced the Funding for Lending scheme to help get much needed capital flowing to business. Our changes to tax allowances will mean a tax cut for 615,000 people here, with 8,000 lifted out of tax altogether. Businesses and families will also be helped by the Chancellor's decision to cancel January's planned fuel duty increase, meaning a litre of unleaded is now 10 pence cheaper than it would have been had we stuck to the previous government's plans. Of course we recognise there's still a long way to go. We're dealing with the toxic legacy of debt that we inherited, and we're hugely impacted by Eurozone instability. But we're on the right road, and the last few months have witnessed the first tentative signs that the economy is starting to heal. There's no doubt that the road to economic recovery is long, and it's a difficult one, but we're making real progress. But returning to the issue of the moment, I'd like to refer back to some of the comments I heard Peter Robinson make during Hillary Clinton's visit to Belfast just a few weeks ago. He said that inevitably there were bumps along the way towards building a better future for Northern Ireland, but that this disorder wouldn't deter us all from moving forward. I think he was absolutely right when he said that. And I think it's also right to say that in a place like Northern Ireland, if you're not pushing forward with further progress, there's always the risk that things will start to slip backwards. Looking back on 2012, there was so much good news for people here. The Titanic events, the Irish Open at Portrush, a broadly peaceful start to the decade of commemorations with the Ulster Covenant centenary, and of course the hugely successful Diamond Jubilee visit by Her Majesty the Queen. The political stability in Northern Ireland that made these events possible has been hard won. It would be a tragedy if that stability were to be jeopardised by continuing violence on our streets. It's down to all of us to ensure that doesn't happen. To those who are worried that their Britishness is being eroded, I'd say that Northern Ireland's position within the UK is arguably more secure than it has been for decades. We have a government that's made it clear that it isn't neutral on the Union and believes that the family of nations which make up the United Kingdom is stronger together, weaker apart. The agreements of the last 2 decades have settled the constitutional position of Northern Ireland on the basis of consent, and there never will be any change to Northern Ireland's position within the United Kingdom without the agreement of the people of Northern Ireland. That is more widely accepted now than at any point in Northern Ireland's history. And a fundamental part of the devolution settlement that underpins that success is the principle that the different identities that make up today's Northern Ireland should all be respected. One of the defining achievements of the peace process was the recognition that those who define themselves as British and those who define themselves as Irish can coexist peacefully in modern Northern Ireland, that they can work successfully together even though they may have different views on some key questions, that life here doesn't always have to be a zero-sum game. And in conclusion, the unprecedented constitutional stability delivered by the Belfast Agreement gives us the opportunity to move on and to focus on the crucial challenges Northern Ireland faces on issues like jobs, like healthcare, like social deprivation, like educational underachievement, and a whole range of other ways to provide real help for disadvantaged communities across Northern Ireland. And it gives us the opportunity to work together to build a successful and cohesive Northern Ireland of which all its citizens can be proud. A place where everybody is treated with equal respect, whatever their background, and however they choose to define their identity. Thank you.